To the Bandano Podcast, where we're calling a spade a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. The Players Association released an unhinged, unchecked, emotional statement going at the league, going at the owners. And just when you think the owners in the league can't get more favor, can't look better in the court of public opinion, the Players Association always seem to do something.
Now compare that approach to how the league responded. The WNBA's official statement could not have been more different in tone or substance. It was calm, measured, focused on fundamentals. The league emphasized unprecedented growth, increasing popularity, and most importantly, a commitment to significantly raising player salaries in a way that ensures long-term sustainability. That phrase matters, long-term sustainability. This is the language of people who understand financial reality. The WNBA has lost money every single year since its founding in 1997. For 27 years, owners have subsidized operations, often at a loss, to keep the league alive. That's not an opinion. That's documented history. So when ownership talks about sustainability, they're not being evasive. They're acknowledging the simple truth that you cannot build a future by overcommitting based on a single spike in interest. The contrast is striking. On one side, you have owners offering historic salary increases while emphasizing fiscal responsibility. On the other, you have players demanding not just higher pay, but expanded benefits that resemble a fully subsidized lifestyle, housing, vehicles, furniture, food, and subscriptions on top of those raises. To the average fan, that doesn't look like fairness. It looks disconnected from the real world. Most people don't get their rent paid by their employer. They don't get free groceries or entertainment subscriptions. When fans hear millionaire athletes demanding those things in a league that still relies on external support, sympathy erodes quickly. This isn't about denying players respect. It's about credibility. And right now, the league sounds like a business trying to stabilize. The union sounds like a group that believes momentum equals entitlement. That difference in tone is shaping public opinion far more than any press release ever could.
Regarding CBA expiration, let's see what they have to say. Friday, January 9th, 2026. At midnight, the 2020 WNBA Players Association Collective Bargaining Agreement will expire. Despite demonstrating our willingness to compromise in order to get a deal done, the WNBA and its teams have failed to meet us at the table with the same spirit and seriousness. Instead, they have remained committed to
Here's where the conversation becomes impossible to ignore. If you step outside the activist media bubble and look at reactions from actual fans, the people buying tickets, watching games, and driving engagement, the consensus is clear. They're siding with the owners. Social media responses weren't vague or split down the middle. They were direct. One fan wrote, "I'm picking a side and I'm going with the owners. They've kept the W alive since day one despite losing money every year. If quadrupling salaries isn't enough, you need to talk to someone working a normal job." Another comment hit even harder. "You play the last decade for 60 to 200K, but now 400K to 1.2 million is disrespectful? That's the reality check this echo chamber isn't giving you." These aren't trolls. These are fans who showed up when the league needed them most, many of them drawn in during the Caitlin Clark boom. And now they're looking at the demands and genuinely confused. To them, this feels like overreach, not empowerment. And when new fans feel alienated, they don't argue, they leave. That's the real danger here. The league finally expanded its audience beyond its core supporters. And now during a critical moment, that audience is quietly disengaging because the dispute no longer feels relatable. It feels ideological, insulated, and disconnected from everyday economic reality. Public support is leverage. Lose it, and your negotiating power collapses.
A whole bunch of garbage. A whole bunch of nonsense. The owners aren't willing to compromise. Well, if you look at the first proposal by the owners compared to this most latest proposal by the owners, all it shows is the owner's willingness to compromise. All it shows is the owner's willingness to move closer to the middle. All it shows is you guys' lack of willing to compromise. You guys' refusal to actually compromise and deal and negotiate. That's all that we get as fans. We don't see you guys trying to compromise.
Here's where the conversation becomes impossible to ignore. If you step outside the activist media bubble and look at reactions from actual fans, the people buying tickets, watching games, and driving engagement, the consensus is clear. They're siding with the owners. Social media responses weren't vague or split down the middle. They were direct. One fan wrote, "I'm picking a side and I'm going with the owners. They've kept the W alive since day one despite losing money every year. If quadrupling salaries isn't enough, you need to talk to someone working a normal job." Another comment hit even harder. You play the last decade for 60 to 200K, but now 400K to 1.2 million is disrespectful? That's the reality check this echo chamber isn't giving you. These aren't trolls. These are fans who showed up when the league needed them most, many of them drawn in during the Caitlin Clark boom. And now they're looking at the demands and genuinely confused. To them, this feels like overreach, not empowerment. And when new fans feel alienated, they don't argue, they leave. That's the real danger here. The league finally expanded its audience beyond its core supporters. And now, during a critical moment, that audience is quietly disengaging because the dispute no longer feels relatable. It feels ideological, insulated, and disconnected from everyday economic reality. Public support is leverage. Lose it, and your negotiating power collapses.
Response. The Women's National Basketball Association issued the following statement today. The current collective bargaining agreement has expired, and negotiations with the Women's National Basketball Players Association remain ongoing. As the league experiences a pivotal time of unprecedented popularity and growth, we recognize the importance of building upon that momentum. Our priority is a deal that significantly increases player salaries, enhances the overall player experience, and supports the long-term growth of the league for current and future generations of players and fans. I love hearing them talk about.
Anyone who's paid attention to professional sports labor disputes has seen this cycle before. It always starts the same way: momentum over confidence and a complete misreading of public sentiment. That's exactly what we're seeing now with the WNBA Players Association and their latest statement following the collapse of CBA negotiations. If you read that statement carefully, really read between the lines, it's astonishing how disconnected it is from reality. This isn't just a strong negotiating posture. It's one of the most tone-deaf public documents a professional sports union has released in recent memory. The players clearly believe they're winning the optics battle. In reality, they're losing the audience faster than the league ever did before Caitlin Clark arrived. At the core of the issue is contrast. On one side, you have owners reportedly willing to quadruple player salaries, a move that would represent one of the largest proportional pay increases in the history of professional sports. On the other side, you have players publicly demanding that ownership also cover lifestyle expenses, housing stipends, furniture, transportation, and even streaming subscriptions. That's not exaggeration. That's what's being floated as part of the negotiation posture. The problem isn't that players want better conditions. Every athlete should want that. The problem is that these demands are being made in a league that has never turned a profit, is subsidized by the NBA, and is only just emerging from decades of financial instability. When the average fan hears that owners are offering salaries in the $400,000 to $1.2 million range, and the response is, "That's not enough," the optics collapse immediately. Public relations isn't about moral righteousness. It's about perception. And right now, the perception is brutal. Fans aren't hearing fair compensation. They're hearing entitlement. They're hearing a union that doesn't seem to understand how fragile its leverage actually is. This isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening at a moment when interest in the league has already cooled significantly from its 2024 peak. Casual fans, the ones who actually drive revenue, are watching this unfold and quietly stepping back. Because when a labor dispute stops sounding like fairness and starts sounding like excess, public sympathy evaporates. And once it's gone, it rarely comes back.
They're just super fans. They see a rumor on Twitter and they run with it. You get people putting out false statements only for the real journalists to put out the real statements, only for the fake journalists to correct their previous misleading comments. Just be on the lookout, please, if you're on Twitter. Moratorium proposal applicable to league biz, specifically free agency. Now, I'm not going to waste your time because I value your guys' time. I do have the ESPN article pulled up. Let me just read it for you real quick. The idea of a moratorium was floated by the league a few days ago, but put in writing late Friday night, sources said, and the union is now reviewing the proposal.
To understand how badly this has been mishandled, you have to look at the exact moment everything unraveled. At midnight on Friday, January 9th, 2026, the 2020 collective bargaining agreement officially expired. This was the deadline, the moment where serious negotiations should have intensified behind closed doors. Instead, the Players Association chose confrontation. Rather than presenting a measured counterproposal or signaling flexibility, the union released a public statement accusing the league of deliberately undervaluing players and intentionally running out the clock. The tone wasn't strategic, it was accusatory. And then came the visual spectacle. An inflatable rat brought to the NBA store as a protest symbol. An inflatable rat. That's not leverage, that's theater. And it instantly reframed the dispute from a serious labor negotiation into something that looked performative and unserious. Fans didn't see strength. They saw a group trying to manufacture outrage instead of negotiating substance. What the statement conveniently left out is far more important. Behind the scenes, ownership had already moved significantly from its original position. Revenue sharing, which had previously hovered around 9%, was reportedly increased in negotiations to approximately 15%. The salary cap was set to rise dramatically, and most notably, base salaries were being restructured at historic levels. We're not talking about modest raises. We're talking about minimum salaries jumping from roughly $60,000 to $100,000 into a range between $400,000 and $1.2 million. That's not incremental progress. That's transformational change. In most professional leagues, such an offer would be considered a massive victory for the union. But instead of framing it that way, the Players Association chose to escalate publicly, as if nothing meaningful had been offered at all. That decision matters, because once negotiations leave the boardroom and enter the public arena, perception becomes reality. And the reality here is that many fans are looking at these numbers and asking a very simple question. What more do you realistically expect? The union didn't answer that question, and that silence is costing them.